Hello everyone, I'm Jansen. I'm a senior principal psychologist with the Ministry of Home Affairs. I wear many hats. I'm the Deputy Chief Psychologist for Crisis Operations and Research. I'm also concurrently the Chief Psychologist for Singapore Police Force, Director of the Police Psychological Services Department. I know, a mouthful. At the same time, I'm the Deputy Commanding Officer of our Crisis Negotiation Unit in the Singapore Police, otherwise known as the Negotiators. The question: how has the COVID pandemic affected law enforcement officers? The job of law enforcement officers, by itself, even before COVID, has always been demanding, challenging, and stressful, fast-paced, with sudden twists, requiring officers to respond very, very quickly on the job. COVID added another layer of complexity to our law enforcement officers. The virus itself, how it spreads, what it looks like, the impact that it has, was unknown in the early days. Law enforcement officers had to then very, very quickly adjust to the new operating terrain. There were a lot of unknowns. And as psychologists, you know that unknowns, uncertainty brings about anxiety. We knew people were getting infected, we knew people were dying, and officers had to operate within this environment. And the closest approximate that we ever had to COVID was SARS in 2003. By that measure, SARS ended in months. COVID has gone on for years, and the end is still not in sight. So for officers, the anxiety continued to grow. They were worried about themselves. They were worried about getting the infection when they were dealing with complainants, when they were dealing with suspects. They were worried about what it meant for the team. Getting infected could mean that you are taken out of action, the manpower manning in the team goes down, the work continues, and it affects the team as well. But during the COVID years, we've also seen that our police officers, our law enforcement officers, were highly resilient. What they could not do in person, they translated into doing it in innovative and fun ways. So while we were not able to meet together to do cohesion activities, we moved those activities online. There were virtual workout sessions, virtual Zumba, virtual exercise, and virtual durian parties. There were even virtual tours to overseas countries. We kept the team spirit alive. We cared for one another. Officers sent Grab packages to each other, Grab lunch, Grab dinner, Grab anything. And that kept the team spirit alive. So throughout the COVID years, we've seen that yes, it does affect our law enforcement officers. It does affect their ability to do their job. It does affect them in terms of their own stress and anxiety. But we've also seen the resilience of the human spirit, and we've seen how officers were very able to quickly improvise, innovate, and continue to fulfill their mission while supporting one another. How has the home team psychology community supported officers during the COVID period? Well, and this is a question that I'm really excited about because I've never seen the home team psychology community come together in such a manner to support our officers as we have done in the last 2 years, and it's just fantastic. My response to this question is on 3 points, the 3 M's. How we measure, how we manage, and how we monitor. On measurements, very early at the start of the COVID, the psychologists kind of had a sensing that this is going to affect officers, and we are concerned about how officers are affected, what support they need, and all the home team psychology units then started doing morale sensing. So what the morale sensing did for us was that it allowed us psychologists to get a good pulse on what are the issues affecting officers, what are the anxieties, what are the worries, what support is needed, and quickly supply this to law enforcement leaders so that support can be given to the officers in a timely, accurate, and useful manner. Second is how we manage. So for managing and supporting officers during the COVID years, for the masses of officers, the psychologists were involved in a huge psycho-education initiative. All the home team psychologists pump out so many resilience building messages, interventions, tips, advice to help officers cope with the stresses of working in the COVID environment and what to do if they are infected themselves. So that's the second one, which is about managing. For the infected officers as well, The home team psychologists had dedicated support measures for the units and for the officers. What leaders should do to reassure the teams, what officers can do to take care of each other, what officers can do to take care of themselves, even going down to very simple and basic things like if you need to go and stay in a hotel or to be quarantined, what should you bring? Power charger, make sure that you have your phone, tablet, extension cord and things like that. So very practical tips as well as exercises to maintain their mental readiness and resilience. So manage was a big part of what psychologists did. Third one was monitor. Even as the virus continues, the psychologists were not resting on their laurels of just measuring and managing. We were also monitoring through doing research on what the impact of the virus was on people, what officers who have gone through the virus experience, so that we would be better able to support future officers who are infected. We conducted mental health prevalence study. Some agencies even look at the longer term impact of the psychological impact on the officers who have suffered from the virus. So the psychologists have actually done a lot. The final question: what are some important learning points that you have gleaned from this experience? The COVID year's experience is something that I've never felt before, never gone through before. I've gone through many crises, from air crashes, tsunami, to SARS and mass llama escape, but nothing I've gone through have prepared me for this. So as I reflected on what are some takeaways, learning points from this, I would probably frame it in terms of P, S, and Y, three factors, P, S, Y. P is the need to be prepared. That we need to constantly make sure that we are doing the research that will prepare us as psychologists to respond. We need to build the capacity to respond. And third is to constantly build capabilities. And I think that's particularly important for home team psychologists because the terrain that we're dealing with is constantly changing and dynamic. So we need to build capabilities even in areas that today we may not be sure whether we need. As psychologists play a big role in providing support. So in the early days when we talk about psychological support, we are always thinking about supporting the officers. But support must also go to the people who are working in the background, the logisticians, the tech people, the infra people, the finance and admin people, and also to the group of people that we sometimes tend not to think about when we think about support, the leaders. So as psychologists, we can do a lot in supporting and to build a system, an infrastructure, ecosystem of supporting, not just officers, but the different players in the system. My last learning point to share is why. Why is yourself. To take care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, if you're not cared for by your leaders, then after a while you run dry. And when you run dry, there really isn't very much of you left to give to people. So my 3 learning points: be prepared, support, and also take care of yourself. And on that final note, the COVID years are not done with us yet. We still have some distance to go. We are still adjusting to the COVID environment as we go along. Most important thing for me, take care of myself, just as you take care of yourself. And I hope to see you around.